Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery and I'm preparing to check in on a couple of my worm bins and get them fed. There are a couple of bins that have got European nightcrawlers living in them. Got some info about them right here. They're not even that old, not even 100 days old yet. 94-day-old European nightcrawler worm bins. And there was a test object that these worms were working on in their old bins prior to them getting moved into these two tubs here 94 days ago. As you can see over here, 256-day in progress compostable bag test going on here. And that 302 really represents exactly how many days ago the test technically started, but there was a pause during which time I thought that the bag wasn't really undergoing much, if any, well, it was out of the system, basically just resting on the top surface, exposed to the air, no worm traffic basically, so I deducted that period of time to really count the number of composting days the progress we're seeing represents. So let's get these systems up on the bench. Got some food for them, we'll slip on a glove, and we're going to get them fed. As you may have noticed in the very beginning, right underneath the bench here is a whole bunch of pumpkin, and every time it's time to chop one of them up, I get a huge collection of pumpkin, so almost every feeding these days has consisted of pumpkin. I got some banana peels here. I think this is cauliflower and maybe some other things. Let's see, I see some little bits of radish. So they're getting fed today after a 12-day pause since their last check-in. Over here in bin number 1 is what we're going to find, hopefully. The remains over here underneath the feeding zone, as the feeding zone indicator shows. That's where the compostable bag was positioned. We did a little bit of a sloppy application of some leaves across the top surface at the very end. But I didn't spread this stuff around, I just left little mounds of this stuff. I wondered how much moisture they would accumulate by being under the plastic. Well, this feeding zone indicator isn't really showing many signs of leftovers. I see a few chunks of material that look like they're parts of that coffee filter that was resting out here. I mean, this one appeared to be in really good shape, still holding together as one object. So, interesting how one system seems to do away with an item and then the other doesn't. Alright, so I guess the one thing I do typically want to do, and I didn't really pay that much attention, is not shred the bag as a result of me extracting it from the system. I'd rather just observe how the bag breaks down on its own. So I try my best to put no impact or a minimal impact on the bag when I'm handling it. But it's really become so fragile, like even right there, over those past 5 seconds prior to me stopping, I felt as I was lifting the thing, like in 2 places I could hear like a little pop, pop, like strands, you know, under the tension of me just trying to lift it, snapping. And, you know, that right there in itself demonstrates that there's no way for me to be able to handle this thing and check it out if I'm not at the same time destructively kind of ripping at it in a way. It's what it feels like almost, but you can see the thing's coming along pretty good at this point, definitely making progress. So I see banana peel, which is that sort of a food item that would definitely stick around for a while before the worms can work it all down. I think, what else? I smell citrus. Citrus always takes a little while too. But let's just go ahead and do a deep dive extraction. They got so much bedding last time. I made a little bit of an error judging where the shelf behind me was, and I put my little storage container with my prepared bedding up there after we finished using it, and it just came flying off the little perch that I had identified for it, and it was on the ground, and the container broke, and I had a bunch of bedding on the floor. So both systems at that point received sort of a secondary, almost a doubling of their bedding supply last time, just because I had all this stuff on the floor, and I figured, you know what, me fumbling it should translate into somebody benefiting. So that was these two systems getting a whole lot of bedding during the last feeding 12 days ago. That was feeding number 8. This will be feeding number 9 at day 94. So here and there, I do feel like I can, yeah, this must be the stem of a pepper, I believe. Oops. These things, I gotta remember, these things are always hollow, even though it looks pretty sturdy and everything, and it's actually quite firm. It's strong stuff, but it's completely hollowed out. I squeezed it a little bit and the whole thing just crushed under the weight of my 2 fingers. So we've got some interesting leftovers to check out here, but we're not on the lookout or a hunt for anything in particular. We just wanted to make ourselves enough space to drop today's feeding into. And it seems like we haven't taken any care to try to preserve this top coating of leaves that we applied last time. That's fine. I like seeing this stuff now get blended in and become more integrated in the whole system instead of just being a big pile out on the surface. Nice and seasoned after the, you know, time it has spent out on the surface over the past 12 days. Right here and there, I'm just bumping into things that I feel like I should maybe set aside if we have a little collection at the end to see how things are progressing in this system. Here, just like in the other system, things look really nice. Good activity down the feeding zone. I guess after 12 days, leftovers like those banana peels are to be expected, or perhaps, you know, large chunks of bedding that you threw in, like a piece of napkin or something. I saw a banana peel just go fly by. And here too, I think we checked it out in the other bin too, these mango seeds. I don't want to, you know, it's like it's not their time yet. It's still pretty tough. You can see all the little fibers and the hairs sort of kind of detangling or whatever and fraying and stuff. The worms are all over that stuff, so they clearly like it. I think we've created a big enough hole here for today's feeding as well. Let's bring on in the meal. This is a pretty big, tough item. I believe it might be a stem of a pumpkin. So yeah, we've got some interesting old stuff. Yeah, you know, I've got no prepared bedding. I ran out, and even in my last couple feedings, I've had none of it, so I had to improvise. Last time I just kind of took pieces of newspaper and crumbled them up, laid them down underneath the, or actually used them as little burrito wraps almost to, you know, wrap up each little hunk of food. Here they're getting a couple napkins or paper towels or whatever those are, and I think that'll do. We did go kind of double size on the bedding application last time, so if we go a little bit skimpy this time, we'll still be in balance, I think. Alright. All kinds of yummy stuff for these little guys. I almost forgot I bought this stuff down too. It's been in my freezer for quite some time now. At some point, months ago, I shredded a whole bunch of corn cob. Some of the corn cob even still had all the corn on it. So I ground it up to a nice flaky consistency, and I've been slowly getting rid of it, putting it in different worm bins, but I almost forgot about it. It's just been in the back of my refrigerator for a while now. I think it's time to get it back into service and keep the worms working on that stuff till it too is gone, just like everything else. This is crushed eggshell. That's what they're getting as grit today, and you know, no sense in trying to preserve these, especially where the worms pretty much did away with it. The feeding zone indicator, the old ones. I've got replacements we can deploy, so even though it was holding out pretty good over here, we almost had almost an entire coffee filter that we could have easily reused as a feeding zone indicator one more time. At this point, I think it'll just get promoted to being right down there in the feeding area, where it'll be serving a much more important purpose. So back in goes our experimental object. Kind of nice putting it right on top of the old feeding zone indicator over there. It's pretty much isolated from other things. Here's a little piece of leftover food. I'm thinking perhaps we can even grab some banana peel, maybe even a piece of pumpkin, and try to dress up that piece of compostable bag with some delicious things on it and around it. So maybe they'll be the worms, they'll be more inclined to hang around on the stuff and continue working it down for us. But at this point, the stuff is definitely, you know, coming along big time. The very beginning, it seemed like it made very, very slow progress and can hardly see any change. But I mean, at the state that it's in now, and you do see it's degrading a lot more now in between check-ins. You know, just a couple weeks time shows yet more wear than it did previous times. So I think after all this time, it's finally starting to show something. You know, when they labeled it as compostable, who knows? Maybe they didn't really have this particular type of composting in mind. I imagine most people imagine a compost process as including a lot of heat, like when you do the whole, you know, backyard composting. And that doesn't really happen here. I mean, it happens to a certain degree, but you definitely don't want to allow it to go really crazy, because that would just end up becoming an environment that would you know, possibly do your worms in. So I'm just at this point spreading my services around here, this whole tilling up of the material and aerating it. I'm just kind of getting stuff fluffed up a little bit, blending in a lot of this leafy material that's all over the place. I think it'll get a lot more action if it's all blended in instead of just being in little piles. Yeah, I mean, we left it as a big pile, you know, pretty much deliberately last time. This time it seemed like blending it in would be a kind of a nice thing. So little bits of leafy material getting blended in all over the place. The worms are going to like that a lot, I think. And some of this stuff's got a good bit of moisture in it. Doesn't feel to me like what we added now is going to bring with it a lot of moisture. I mean, those pumpkin bits a little bit maybe, who knows, but I got to keep in mind that I did include a couple just dry pieces of paper in here too. And even our new replacement feeding zone indicators. Yes, I'm allocating replacement feeding zone indicators to these two systems. So we can neatly mark right where we fed. Fed right there. And we fed right there. All right, that's our check-in with the European nightcrawlers. Now 6 more days till they hit 100 days old, you know? Do we come back in only 6 days and check in on them? It will be their 100th day in service. It would give us an excuse to barge in on them, working all that food down. I bet there would be a nice little worm party going down there, because that feeding we just gave them, if you ask me, I think it was pretty nice. I mean, today when we got in here, after 12 days, it did seem like they were still working, you know, stuff we gave them last time down, but if we were to go back in here in only 6 days, I think we would see quite a worm party. I don't know. We'll have to decide on that later. All right, everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.